yesterday.
Thank you.
We're going to go through what's involved just to get a feel for what has to happen under the hood for LawManager Web upgrade. The first issue is that your client machine has to be IE7 or IE8 for the 6 series. Probably not this release, but next release we might have to start putting IE9. I think you have to stay with 5.3, right?
We're on 6. We made 5.3 backwards. I guess we moved to 8.
Okay.
And to make sure that we actually need a change to our
back when, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. And investing under XP that's in Win 7 is the OS. It's straightforward. Now on the server, you basically need a Windows 2003 or 2008 server. Still dependent upon Microsoft Windows for our server. That's because of the need hardware to support the DB script. You don't have to write all your DB scripts. The main reason we can't run on any other server out there, there's all kinds of Java that we still maintain backup quality of DB scripts. And they have to sell in a long period of time, we want to try to slowly get to a pure Java solution, but that would require a client to write the Java script. The test server that or the Java application server that we test. We're also trying to support WebLogic, but we still had no client. The obvious next server to support is WebLogic. There's some little bits of interest in WebServer in the development space, so that's another Java application server that we expect support. But currently, Concept 6, no source, no cost. Java application server, and from the information I read, it is one of the dominant application servers that really runs out there. So of course, it is
Nick, so I'm having a very difficult time hearing.
move it closer.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just couldn't hear anything.
So, and then Microsoft IIS can front end the Tomcat server if you want to do a Windows trusted authentication that you can either have a single sign-on mechanism or just a trusted authentication login. Common for working in a Windows environment. Okay. Let's move this down here. That are involved if you're going from 5x. So in case of MetLife, they're going from a 5x to a 6x. The key is, of course, to deploy the new server, which should run on existing hardware just by deploying Tomcat on that existing hardware. You should be able to not require all new hardware. You may take the opportunity to upgrade a new version of Windows. So you may want to upgrade some things, adding Tomcat as part of the deployment. But you really can run almost on the exact same hardware, just deploying Tomcat in the new web. Another big thing we had to consider to make the transition to 6 easier really just be able to not require clients to go out and have new hardware. These are some of the key things that you need to deploy that Web requires. So the 6X series products, both Pro and Web, now have this saved report mechanism. So you need a series of LM report system tables and a saved report notebook you to manipulate any of the admin level, any of the saved reports. So a user save a report and they want to get rid of it, or they want to change the role, or they want to allow other groups to have access to it, you need the saved report notebook against the saved tables. The next we've implemented, which is very useful for all kinds of script development, is truly before we had the LM variables system tables, if you had configuration of, let's say, your eDocs server name, or you had different script that had various settings for connect different things, when either multiple environments or something changed, you'd have to go in and edit scripts. So this is a LM variable system table where you have a corresponding notebook where you can have like the eDocs server name as a little in a notebook, and create variables as you want, and then you can list those variables from scripts. And it allows the administrator to simply go through and just change some settings on this system book. Yeah. Is that you can reference these variables in scripts, either static variables, dynamic variables. A variable would be it's going to hold that value until your server is restarted. That's one of these variables. We'll always go to the database table and look it up, and that way you can dynamically change tables, and your scripts will go and check the tables. Sometimes, referencing these variables quite often through business, you don't want a database every time, so you might want to use a static variable, and you're okay with, the change of that variable won't take effect, till the day. But some might want to have a dynamic variable, so we support both static and dynamic variables now. It's a little system table with a corresponding notebook, relatively easy to add. Little difficult for you guys because you don't have the toolkit. With one of or the toolkit architecture is that we create packages that load these notebooks. So if you are under DO architecture, one's architecture was to be able to very quickly take a notebook that is new, or maybe even a tablet or a notebook that somebody else developed, it into another client system. Without DO, it's very, very difficult to do. And that's what you're, you got, yep, yeah. It's still possible to do. It's just going to be a little bit more labor intensive. My reason why Wago, I talk to Wago and see if the advantage of that. You do that 1-2 months. It's not like it's something that is going to benefit you on a weekly basis. So it's not the greatest advantage in the world to consider, but I just let you know these are some of the things that you get out of the studio architecture, which you have, Linda. So we did these some variables relatively easy into your system.
Hey, thank you.
Then there's a whole new alias configuration. I showed you that yesterday, where you have the LM6 DB file. Your additional Tomcat server configuration file. Sure. So under X, we had, I haven't been X in so long. I can't even configure alias in 5X, but it was done way. Now it's just done a different way. It's a big deal to up your configuring aliases. ProVex to Web 6, more your scenario, Linda. Scenario just going from Web 5 to Web 6. You have a few more issues. Start, you server hardware. So especially the clients that were pro server really need now to have a server. The middle tier server. So from pro client server to web, you definitely need new hardware. Some of our pro clients are running 3-tier, and there you could just probably weigh with the same middle tier hardware. Although the pro 3-tier deployment didn't need to have a server. It really wasn't doing too much in a pro 3-tier deployment. So chances are, if you're from pro to web, you're going to need new software. If you're going from Web 5X to Web 6, you can really stay with the same serverware. You know, new hardware, but it's really a requirement. Your performance should stay the same. It has to get a little faster with the same hardware. Right. Right. You might want to take the opportunity to upgrade some of the OS, which is more infrastructure standardization. New York City Law just joined us, Linda. Linda Signa is online.
Oh.
She's in the middle of this kind of project here. So what's your seat? I'm going to let Teresa just say hello.
We're at 3, and we're just taking one notebook to the web, version 6.2.1.
Okay.
And we're at the tail end of testing now. We have to get through some citywide security protocols, but we hope to be up in the next 30 to 45 days.
Wow, fantastic.
We do document requesting with a variety of city agencies, and they're using a separate application to communicate with us, for us to ask them for different documents and witnesses, and for them to respond. And we've wanted to expand that program for a number of other agencies. Right now, there are just 2 that use it. We want 10 different client agencies to use it. So this is going to allow them to go to a web notebook, open up, see what our requests are, provide documents to us electronically, and have everybody looking at the same place for what was requested and what was outstanding. So our end will still be using a regular notebook, the Pro version, but the clients will see the web version.
So let's continue on with Pro. You have a server issue. Like the web-to-web upgrade, the new all 6 deployments need the LM reports table and the LM variables table if you support the saved reports. You're going to actually consider allowing these remote to use the report wizard and actually save reports. That's what I'm starting to think. Right. With 5, you can go to 6 Pro. Okay, so you need LM reports table and LM variables system tables. Again, supports the ability to save reports that are now available on the reports menu. So to have a file share, that's a perfect example of where the web users, these remote web users, wouldn't have to your file shares, so there would be no way to give them saved wizard reports and be able to allow them to run saved wizard reports because it's all going through the database. Okay. On variables, system tables are more of an internal mechanism to allow administrators to script with various variables so that you don't have to edit scripts every time something has to change. In your case, your server, moves, you got to go edit scripts or some other thing change in your environment, and you have to edit scripts. Now you can use the system notebook that you can dynamically change something, and you don't have to touch scripts anymore. That's all in variables all about. A key thing in upgrading, and this for a web to web 6, but it's not as important in going from to web. Typically, whenever you upgrade to a new LawManager, there may be some additional underlying properties available to developers. The older your system, the more you need to upgrade your property table. The more your system, you're going to have an impact. So a typical upgrade, there's anywhere from 2 or 3, maybe upwards of 10 if it's a real system that you need to upgrade your property table. And the properties are just level mechanisms to configure events, to configure settings. I think maybe one that is, you have user queries on the left-hand side for web. Feature we added is automatic wildcarding, so that if the Acme, it's really doing an automatic wildcard, the user doesn't have to do Acme percent for percent Acme, right? That is a configurable new setting with a property in the system to configure it. So that's an example of where the property table needs to be upgraded. The key on a pro web upgrade is you need to retest all of your notebooks and all of your scripts. We should try our best to make backwards compatible with Pro, right? I think on our versions of web technology, we had a 4 and a 5X. We really, because the technology wasn't available, we could support everything that Pro did. It's a very dynamic notebook, and you can have scripts that look at almost anything on in the notebook, and you can change almost anything on the notebook. You can have scripts up on a main section that changes down in the tab. You can have scripts down tab, change values up in section. So pretty elaborate Pro systems, or even your developers went out and built these elaborate Pro systems. In your client system has buttons on go off and web pages on some web server. So in Pro to really go off and do pretty exotic things. not a notebook, but also talking to other subsystems. And in upgrading to web, early versions of web, it was work to go through all of these scripts, not the basic scripts, but the methodic scripts. First, to find them and see if they even worked under web, right? And then if it didn't work because that wasn't supported under web, rethink how you could re-implement that functionality, or maybe that functionality was just not even supported. Okay, experienced that a lot in your pointing to the MetLife folks. In thing from the Pro to web, lots of things stopped working, and you had to rework. So it was very taxing and difficult with the 5 release of web. With the 6, the major thrust of Web 6 was to support the ability of scripts running when you migrated from Pro to web. And the thing that we were faced with, Citi actually pushed us into this, was they had the cut that when a matter valid, when I enter it, I need a certain number of players, and I need a certain number of what they called activities entered on the notebook. And these were 2 tabs, right? Valid to unless they had data in the header and data in 2 tabs. Well, under you couldn't do that. You save your header first, then you had to each tab and save your, right? So Citigroup just couldn't even consider web at all. And I'm sure all of us that have built these pretty elaborate Pro systems have little scripts that do something like that. It's basically the concept that a script in the main section looks at data in a tab, or a script down in tabs look at data in the main section. Those scripts need to sort of see the data and operate properly. So the big thread was to actually support dynamic view of data in the main section and multiple tabs, and all that data to go back and forth between the and the middle tier, because basically web works is in the middle there's a actual notebook. Almost think of it as a Pro notebook run in the middle tier. And what happens is the view of that notebook gets played in the browser as an HTML page. It's just a sort of of what that notebook is back in the middle tier, right? Page on the HTML browser. I mean, it's a sort of a paper, let's say. And then when I button or I move from field to field, things in the middle tier, and it gets updated in the notebook. And then whatever changed, because scripts could run all kinds of things, they then do update of what has changed. So data going forth, and for these scripts that were quite complex, and projects will have, say, anywhere from 10 to 20, maybe 30 comp scripts. You'll have hundreds of scripts, but there's these 10, maybe 30 really complex scripts that just will not run under 5x web. And now, again, I'm generalizing. Let's say I have 30 complex scripts. With Web 6, 95 of them are going to work out of the box now, and there's 5 left that have to be rethought. Okay, as the level of effort. So the things that Web 6 cannot do, could do, that you could rework, but at least, and in this case, they have these very complex notebooks. And, you know, they're faced with probably 50 to 70 not work if they 5x web. And even the first version of 6, it wasn't going to work. And they pushed 1, and 6.1 major redevelopment where lots of scripts now all of a sudden work. And Citigroup was a much less project migrating to web, and they can do things where they fill in an ad or fill in 3 tabs and then hit save, right? The other was we got lots and lots of complaints in filling in tabs. I want to enter easily 3 years or 5 calendar events. It's just an use of entering data in a tabular fashion. A Pro 5X to Web 6 upgrade is all of your scripts and all of your notebooks. But the number of scripts that will not work or do not work identical in Pro are much less. I would 5% of your scripts are actually having an issue that you have to go back and reevaluate. The more system, the more chance you have scripts to be rethought or reworked. If you do basic functions in your scripts under Pro, almost your scripts will come over. Web is able to be 100% backwards compatible because in Pro, Andy exposed so many things that people can do in dynamic application through that there's always going to be things that will not work compared to a Windows client and a web client. But specifically Sin 6.2 made a major leap to a dynamic notebook. So that's some of the very specific things that you have to really reevaluate. This gets technical, but I go through them just so you have a basic understanding. I think it's important to have a basic understanding of some of these things. The first set, for web startup, if you're and just to really having a deployment of both Pro and web. So you want to do things one way when the whole system starts up. In web, you might want to do something a little different when the system starts up. So a startup script that runs, that does a whole of administrative and housekeeping functions in your system. And we create a separate event for web startup so that if you want to set global variables or do something a little different in web, you could compare Pro. The key thing is that with Pro, you can see the startup is unique to the person. In web, startup is for every on the server. Okay, aware of that. Events behave slightly differently, and your scripts, most common events in all of your projects are what's called the after field. It is by far the most used event, and I'd say 50, sometimes 60% of your business scripts are all around the after field event. The after field event is pretty close to being backwards compatible. The Windows script runs much often, so you're a little sensitive to performance issues. If you do have some performance issues in going to web, you need to look at do you have too many scripts running on what's called the Windows event, Windows event. So before looking at these specifically, the before field sort of runs different times. Compared the before field event runs when you enter a field. Okay, the most used event in all of your systems, and it's critical to Pro. It runs when you leave a field. Cigna had us optimize this. What's happening in whenever you have a script, and just take the after as an example. Whenever script on the after field, it's your typical field validation. I type something in on a field, and I go to the next field, I check what the user's typed, I want to validate that it's valid data, field logic. And again, you have hundreds of these in your system. We server. Web is just again, it's a piece of paper that is really live application. So once something I move to the next field, web back to the server, logic in the here, and then give a result back to the user, back to the browser. So it's called multi-post. It's using age technology and round trip, from the server and back to the browser. So there's overhead, and that helped us identify that when there isn't logic on a field, let's not round trip. Okay, and so we've greatly improved in, I think, SU 1 that if you have a form with 30 fields and only have logic on them, well, you jump around all 28 fields almost instantaneously now, and a slight delay on the 2 fields that have logic. We were doing round trips on every field because we didn't know whether there was logic on. We had logic, which fields didn't have logic. So improved end user experience in from field to field now. If you prompt the user questions, every one of your not dogs to the users will come over 100% functional, but the user for data input or user for a yes/no question, those are rewritten when going to web. You have to rewrite those scripts. Typically, a typical client will have 2, 3, or 4 of these in their system. So it's not a big deal, but it's a known thing that has to be redone. If you ask a question to users in the before commit, you have to reevaluate doing that. It's not common that you do this, but some people did do this, and it is tricky to rework those. So just identify. Most people don't ask questions. This would, when you hit the save button, it's for a question. Okay, it has to be reworked. Sometimes people have their notebooks automatically start and find data. So if you had any Pro notebooks that when you started up the Pro notebooks, most Pro notebooks start up in find mode. The notebooks actually do something when you started them up. That has to be worked as a user query. So an example of just something that has to be redone. Not too hard. The down sometimes hash books and web hashes the data slightly differently. Have to change logic behind drop down data or display their data. Not too common. Some people set up data sets to be cached at startup. That's fine for Pro because every time somebody starts up Pro, it would have a refresh of data. This is going to be cached for the lifetime of that server being up, which could be multiple days, weeks, maybe longer. So you typically need to evaluate that. Again, not used too often. With tabs of 6, we have with tabs getting their data retrieved, so you had to set a new setting to solve. So this is no problem now with 6.2. I think 6.1 have gotten around this problem. Early versions of 6 actually go in and set this for every tab to make that work. In the after field, this is just a little note that have to bear that your scripts run to completion in web, where in Pro, your scripts actually stop where the dialog states. So when dialog appears, appears in Pro, that message is going to actually be suspended in the middle of a script and hit OK, acknowledging the message. In web, the script runs completely. So if you have some logic after the dialog, it's running at different times. So you have to be aware of it. It usually doesn't cause a problem, but it could cause a problem if something very different after dialog message. Apple is just not even supported. It was a low-level thing that would allow you to get control and do something fancy, and it's just not. You don't really have controls in web, sort of controls. So, change the width or the position of a field. Again, some people do it. Message is just not supported. Message box is a script way of bringing up a message to the user. Okay, and these messages in web would actually show up on the server's computer. So you can't use message box. You basically scan all your scripts for calls to message box, which is again the DB script kernel mechanism for sending a message to the user. You need to switch it all to dialog. Some people, if you're an old-time VB script programmer, you just knew about message box and you used it, and we teach training that you can't use it and you have to use dialog, but some still did use it. So pro systems just have all their message box to dialog. Every time a user leaves a control, even if they haven't changed a value, web only runs the after field if the user's changed the value. With optimization that Cigna helped us where the after field only trying optimization even further. And other clients, it's not just Cigna. First reaction to web is it's a little slower. Okay, it's an honest because web technology. We really tried our best to make web as fast as possible. Do we not do this round trip that really gives the user experience of a delay when field script? But even script on a field, if the user doesn't, if the on the field and moves off without changing the value, again, optimization performance reasons, we've decided not even run the script. People would scripts, a validation script, if you wanted to validate that field every time it went to the field, changed data, right? Again, to try to get the best performance out of web, we've decided not run the script. It's very rare that people would actually script that want that field value checked, even if it hasn't typed something on a field. So just have to be aware of this. Web visible, we have ability. Pro, you could have a certain set of notebooks, feeds, and tabs available, and if you can have a different set of notebooks fields available. So notebook level, the obvious thing is when these log in, they're only going to have one notebook in your case. Dual Pro web deployment, we anticipated users may want to have different single if they log in Pro versus web, and so the whole series of web visible properties. Property for the manager, which is the notebooks menu, web property for the notebook, to have the notebook available, web visitable properties for the tab and the field, allowing the same user to log in to see different things in Pro versus web. Use this if you have something fancy in Pro, it's not supported that you can't web, you want to hide it in web. Or just have a different class of users that should see a whole bunch of things. So this is main new thing in a Pro deployment. You wouldn't think to do this, but in a web deployment, you may want to consider configuring certain things to be visible in web are not visible in Pro. Yeah. Notebook designer training. We have a specific class, a 2-day training class that goes. We have a dedicated manual on web development, LawManager web development. And so I went out to Washington State Attorney General, did actually a 3-day class for them because they're in the process of moving to web. So we have our notebook designer training, which teaches you how to build notebooks, and then we have the development training, which talks about all the details of figuring things for web. I'm pretty close to being finished. Notebook captions. That's real estate. So automatically stripped, it had a caption for a notebook called something. Web strips the word notebook off the caption because there's just space in web to display, and our base system did notebook on a lot of our notebooks, and so it looked bad, so we put a little thing in here. It's just important to know. It's not people think, but it's actually, we did it on purpose. Favorites, it doesn't wrap the text, it just shows the first X characters. Visit each word. So again, this is performance optimization. In find, we find the data, and then as the user moves from field to field, you might have some business logic run. So we can do data in Pro and bring data up quite quickly, a lot, in Pro. What was find the data in the middle tier and actually visit every record, just in case you have calculated fields or special running, because one chance to send the data to the user on the web page and what the data is. And some will have a notebook with a bunch of calculated fields or some dynamic things going on, and you go to use that notebook in web, and it is just really, really slow. It just displays very slow. For example, Linda, your invoice detail notebook, invoice detail tab, this in it that goes to this issue, and it was spending so much time in all of these, visit every record in the tab before it could play the data, and it had 1,000 detail records. That takes somewhere of 30, 40 seconds to display its data. Okay, and understanding what's going on in the tab and re-architecting how that tab works, you can greatly improve performance for the tab. So whether it's a notebook or whether it's a tab, when you're migrating to web, if you see the notebook or tab runs real slow when it has to display a lot of data, it's really, you typically go in there and check what's running. It's either you've got some when field changes, calculation code, record change code, or dynamics drop downs. You have something going on in that notebook or tab that's working differently in web, and you have to rework it. Real quickly, there's a few controls that are not supported. you rarely use these controls. There's a new version of the stored procedure that needs to be instituted, key number generation. So I think that loss equal, this is all technical. But
Yay.
involved in moving from pro to web. It's the dirty work that we all have to do under the hood to get the systems to work. Questions? Thanks, Linda.
This was great, Nick. Nick, a lot. I did learn a lot. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.